If you're watching this video, you probably love roguelikes. Or you're just now getting into them, and if that's the case, congratulations. Okay, that's the wrong graphic. I've played a lot of roguelikes. The good, the bad, the ugly, and the uglier. So today, I'm gonna review 10 roguelikes as fast as I can, so you know which games to look out for and also which ones to avoid. Because some of the games on this list are kinda trash. Hopefully, you could find a title here to add into your roguelike repertoire. Without further ado, start the timer and let's go. Dead Estate is a top-down action shooter. It's charming, the vibes are very well done, and the goal is to climb a massive mansion full of creepy monsters to unveil the mysteries underneath. There's an expansive roster which include this cool little experiment guy who shoots really fast, a woman luchador who can only use melee attacks, and of course this witch who... You know? The pseudo-progression of this game includes multiple endings, an estate that evolves by giving you more floors, and a lot more. There's a ton of weapons to choose from, but no active items, which I think is a very weird choice this day and age. The roster doesn't really play too differently from one another, besides a base weapon change and the occasional passive. There's a cool yet annoying mechanic where you're constantly getting chased by this guy named Chunks, and because of it, it forces you to climb the estate as fast as you can so that you don't have to deal with him being in the same room trying to blow your head out of your ass. It's kind of fun at first, but it honestly becomes a drag the more and more you run into him. However, the biggest problem with this game by far is the perspective. It tries doing this stylized diagonal view the entire time, and it makes dodging projectiles miserable. There's also objects that straight up obstruct your vision, and taking damage because of it happens a lot. You don't have a dodge roll either, and instead you have to jump, which adds an entirely new layer of frustration because you have to worry about the Z-axis as well. I hate to complain about one thing so much, but it nearly ruins the game. Still, it's pretty fun and the vibes are immaculate, so I'd say it's worth it at your own risk if you're okay with dying a bunch of cheap deaths for little to no reason. I'll put it in C tier, it's a passing grade. Next up, we have Balatro, quite possibly the most surprising roguelike on this list. Do you like poker? Well, I don't. Yet somehow when I discovered this game, I managed to play it for 36.8 hours in a single week. Balatro is a poker roguelike, where you're constantly trying to get enough points to survive the round. What separates this from a boring snorefest card simulator is the inclusion of Joker cards, which changed the way you play the game. Alongside boss battles with extra rules, planet cards that level up certain hands, booster packs which give you special cards, and a ton of other mechanics that I couldn't even name if I tried. I can't even begin to explain the amount of dopamine that gets dumped from your brain whenever your build finally starts to make sense and you get a bajillion points by just playing a flush. But just know, it's a lot more fun than it looks. You gotta take my word on this one. Talking about this game or even just looking at it doesn't do it justice, so you're just gonna have to try it out. Surprisingly, I'm gonna put this game in A tier. Next up we have Spiritfall, which is one of the lesser known games on this list, and honestly that's kind of a shame. Spiritfall is a platform fighter roguelike. Basically, if Hades and Smash Bros smashed his bros and had a bro, you would get this. The mechanics are surprisingly deep, with wave dashing, tech chasing, air dodging, and all of the complexity that comes with platform fighters. In fact, it's so complicated that you're gonna die a lot when you first start playing it, and it's gonna feel quite terrible because every platform fighter comes with a steep learning curve. But once it clicks, you'll be full comboing bosses and 3-stocking mini-bosses whenever you see fit. Each item set fights completely different from one another. In Smash Bros terms, you get your slow Ganondorf type weapon set, but you could also choose your fast Fox type weapon set as well. Let's not forget, this is a roguelike after all, so everything from your attacks, your projectiles, your ultimate move, and passive abilities can be evolved by enchantments you find on your run. And these enchantments change everything, giving you new combo strings or a third jump, explosives, or even a teleport. It's a very fun time if you like Smash Bros, roguelike games, or both. And even though I'm not the biggest fan of the overall aesthetic, I really do believe that more people should play this game. So I'll put it at the bottom of A tier or the top of B tier, you know, somewhere like right there. Next up, we have Rounds. Unlike every other roguelike on this list, Rounds is a game that you can only play with another person. Basically, you and a friend start off as normal dudes trying to kill each other in a 2D platform shooter. Whenever one of you loses a round, you get to choose from a hand of random enchantments to level your character up. And these enchantment cards are nuts. Homing bullets, poison ammo, regeneration, and 67 total cards for you to mix and master. The rounds are really fast and sometimes very unbalanced, but I think that's the fun of it all. I don't have a shot here. No! I genuinely loved the feeling of getting some overpowered buff and destroying my girlfriend Reb, but I also laughed when Reb got an insane card and constantly one-shot me instead. Also, if 67 cards isn't enough for you, the modding community has went completely crazy with this game, and they've added an impossibly massive amount of content. New game modes, a higher player limit, and more cards than you'll probably be able to use in your entire life. A final note about this game, it's $6 and it goes on sale all of the time. So as long as you have a friend in a couple of minutes, you'll always have a fantastic versus roguelike to come back to after playing something a little more serious. I'm gonna put this one in A tier as well. Next up, we have Neon Abyss. Neon Abyss is a roguelike that I genuinely wanted to love. It's a 2D action platform shooter with a relatively fun aesthetic, and I think that's it. Unfortunately, this game doesn't have anywhere near enough depth to back the idea of a roguelike up. Most weapons function exactly the same. The enemy types are boring and awkward to face, and the biggest flaw by far is the lack of overall variance. Sure, there's different guns, but none of them make you play differently. There's passive items, but they're all just very basic stat changes like more hearts or more armor, or a chance for armor to drop if you find hearts. They also try this weird creature system where you find eggs and there's a percentage chance that they hatch, and if they do, they just follow you around and do something until they expire. It sounds cool at first, but then late game you have to deal with so much screen clutter, it makes you wonder why they decided to make it work like this at all. I guess the best way to explain this game is that it pretends like it's doing a lot of things, but all of those things are just kind of happening around you. You never have to change your approach, and basically every run may look different but ends up being played exactly the same. There's overworld progression, which makes the game deeper, but it's all just random mini games which again don't add much. I know we're speedrunning the reviews here, but there's something I saw in editing that I absolutely have to add in. There's a character you can unlock and you want to know what makes him special? He can see item descriptions. He's also paid DLC. They're also trying to milk the shit out of players by making the game $20 and then adding $10 of DLC on top of that. And I can name like 90 roguelikes that are way more worth it for that price. I say to stay clear of this one. A lot of people enjoy it, so maybe give another review a listen to make your final decision. But as a closing statement, I'm gonna say this. I own this game on both the Nintendo Switch and on Steam. The reason why is because I originally bought it on the Nintendo Switch, but more often than not, the game would randomly crash on a loading screen and completely negate my entire run. Getting frustrated, I ended up buying it on Steam to avoid that problem, and now this is the only game I have ever regretted buying twice. Yeah, D tier. Moving on. Next up, we have Robo Quest. Imagine if Borderlands 2 and Doom had a cyborg child. That's what Robo Quest is. If I could explain Robo Quest in 4 words, they would be, go fucking play it. It's a co-op FPS shooter, and this roguelike is so goddamn good. The soundtrack, the weapons, the characters, everything about this game is a masterclass, but it's definitely carried by how magnificent the gameplay actually is. Each character plays differently, and in turn, they look for different items to maximize their potential. There's a melee class that could blink and stab enemies, a Bastion class that has an invulnerability shield with a battery that drains rapidly, so you have to tap it to block damage, a sniper, and a few others. levels. You progress by fighting enemies through these massive stages, and you find weapons and upgrades as you go. You also level from fighting enemies, and every time you level up, you get to choose a random character-specific trait. The weapons in this one are so Borderlands that it hurts, all having different levels of rarity, with some being game-breakingly fantastic, but most being good enough. A weird aspect of this game is how much the overworld progression actually benefits your runs, unlocking super jumps, jetpacks, and movement tech that makes things a lot easier the more you play. I know some people can be really turned off by stuff like that, but trust me, this game does it very well. This game is also the hardest title on the list, so be sure to get a friend when you play it so that you have somebody next to you when you're getting your teeth kicked in again and again. I absolutely can't recommend this game enough, so I guess I'll put it in S tier? Next up, we have Peglin. Peglin is a very weird, albeit really fun roguelike. You take the skillful yet random nature of Peggle gameplay, add different balls, enemy types, dungeons, and inventory items to buff your character, and you get this. It's random, it's fun, it's satisfying and strategic. I'm normally kinda scared whenever I purchase an early access title, but when I first played this game about a year ago, it was a completely different game, and even back then I thought it was worth the price tag. So I can only imagine that it's going to continue to keep getting better. This game is available on mobile as well, so you can get it on your phone and then do something else besides doom scrolling Twitter. I don't really have much more to say about this game, it's just silly and fun, so B tier. Next up, we have Across the Obelisk. I did a sponsored video for them way back, but they only paid for that video, so right now if I want to, I can say that this game sucks. Unfortunately for the haters, it doesn't. Across the Obelisk is a deck building roguelike, which is eerily similar to Slay the Spire, except it has a lot more mechanics, a much larger roster, an inviting, colorful environment, and it's up to 4 players. The amount of synergizing you can do now that there's 4 characters is insane, and each character has the capacity to run different decks and builds to maximize their unique passives. The permanent progression aspect of this game definitely makes you way stronger in your runs, allowing you to deal more overall damage, start with more energy, or even have more gold. In turn, it unfortunately makes this game lean more towards an RPG than an overall roguelike, which does manage to tank its replayability a little bit, but it is still very much worth the time. I do recommend playing with friends, especially on your first few runs, because bumbling around and learning how things work is an excellent experience to go through with a team. But keep in mind that you're probably gonna die a lot, and sometimes it's gonna be your friend's fault. I put this game on a high B tier. Next up, we got Raven's Watch. Raven's Watch is very good. It's a top-down action roguelike game that revolves around my most hated gaming mechanic ever: time. I absolutely hate video games that use a timer as a gimmick, which is why I'm so stunned that I absolutely love this game. Basically, you spawn into a world and only have a certain amount of time to level up and acquire resources before you're teleported to the boss fight. This basically means the entire time you're playing, you're mapping out which paths you could walk to efficiently get as much as possible so that you could be powerful enough to defeat the boss when the clock strikes 20. There's caves, quest missions that take a while but give amazing loot, the shop, an eyeball that unveils more of the map, and the list goes on. However, the best part of this game is the heroes that you can choose. Every single one of them plays significantly different from one another, including a set of strengths and weaknesses that they can offer themselves and their party. It's basically a MOBA, except instead of buying gear, you evolve different abilities to do different things, and hopefully get to a point where your build clicks and you get an insane god run. It's 4 players co-op, but it does increase the difficulty based on how many players you bring, so get ready to struggle because this game is hard enough as it is. The massive downside though is that this game is still in early access. Unlike the other early access titles that I talked about, this one does feel like it's not fully there yet, which is a shame because I absolutely love it. The bones are there, the aesthetic is some of of the best I've seen, and the gameplay is fantastic. But there are currently only 2 stages and a third one about to be released in about a week or so. Fortunately, the devs behind this game actually made another roguelike called Curse of the Dead Gods, and people seem to really like that one, so you do have the insurance of knowing that they've made something complete and great before. They're moving pretty fast, and I'm sure that 1.0 patch is just over the horizon. It is at the very top of A tier and will definitely be an S tier when it is. And finally, we have Brotato. This is one of those vampire survivor type roguelikes. You know, the ones where you don't really do anything and you just get stronger by walking around? But unlike most vampire survivor clones that exist, Brotato actually tries to reinvent the wheel. Your strength in this game is entirely tied to your inventory, which you buy at the shop between rounds. Getting duplicates of items levels it up, and there's a bunch of passives to further progress your character as well. The build variety in this game is exceptional. Builds that give you permanent healing or clear entire screens at once due to AoE, or builds that revolve on melee but deal so much damage because you become a blender of death by the end of your run. Though it's pretty simplistic, this game has a ton of characters. Like a lot, I ain't even gonna count all of that. And each run feels fast enough to squeeze in when you have time, but also feels full enough to leave you satisfied win or lose. It's available on mobile as well, so you could buy this game on your phone and have something else to do besides Peglin and doom scrolling on Twitter. That's a callback. I think Brotato is very fun, so I'm gonna just put this game in A tier. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's different from the stuff I normally do, but I thought it'd be a fun thing because I play so much roguelikes and just kind of want to talk about them. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know with a comment below, and if you want this to be a series, please comment, make it a series, because I would love to talk about all the other games that I've played, and there's a lot of them. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do, and here is a video that I think you'll enjoy. But if you don't think that one's cool, here's another video that I think you'll enjoy, so you could choose out of the 2. And you know what, they're in playlists as well, so you could click that and it'll lead you to other videos that are like that video. How cool is that? It's fucking cool, right?